Hi, this is Rayo Creations, and we decided to make another rustic solid wood pumpkin for the autumn season. We were able to get this reclaimed wood from an old house roof, and it was really awesome, but it had tons and tons of nails. So we used this really handy dandy metal scanner that you just turn on and it lights up and makes a little beeping sound if it finds any kind of metal. The only thing you have to watch out for is letting go of the button, because when you press it back down again it rings and lights up like it saw a piece of metal. So that's what that is. And the reason why you want to scan this is if you're running the wood through power tools after this, you don't want to ruin the blades. And these are the cool old nails. They were actually rectangular. And then I just grabbed a carpenter's pencil and roughly sketched out the shape, so I had a basic idea to follow when I was cutting it out. And then obviously these pieces of wood were just a little too long, so I was going to chop them off right below my sketch on the chop saw. And as you can see, these boards are pretty beaten up and weathered. And I like my fingers, so I prefer holding onto the larger section of wood when I'm cutting. However, this wider board had a weird angle to it, and to keep it flat up against the saw, I had to use the smaller side, which really wasn't that big of a deal. It wasn't too much smaller. So there's my two background pieces of the pumpkin, and to assemble it I'm also going to need a foreground piece, so I'm just measuring this up and sketching it out as well so I can cut it. And I really loved all the little dents and nicks and holes in these pieces of wood, so I was really trying to keep those, but you know, you gotta cut off what you have to. And this is me using my husband's band saw. And of course, being the really safe person he is, he realized that the the guard was up way too high, so he moved it down for me and made it a lot safer in the next cut. But then we had to move it right back up again. So there's Mr. Safety keeping my fingers. And yes, he was able to tilt the table for me so that that last cut was much easier and I didn't have to sand it all off for the shape. So there's me taking off a little bit of the edge of each corner with that angle, giving it a little bit more of a rounded shape, but very rough rounded shape, and not even at all because it gives it more character. And that top foreground piece, I wasn't quite crazy about the shape of it at that point. Kept looking at it, flipping it around. Wound up trimming it just a little bit more before I had the final shape I wanted. And then I decided to very quickly just soften some of the really hard edges. I want to keep a lot of the roughness to it, so it has that aged look and keeps that aged look, but I also don't want splinters or anybody getting hurt, so... In assembling this, the bulk of it is wood glue, and I put it on nice and thick, seeing as how I didn't sand down any of the edges to make sure that they really matched super awesome, because I wanted a little bit of a gap in some places and I wanted it to look old again. And I knew I could be always securing it later on with some screws in the back if needed. And although I'm okay with the gaps, I'm not okay with gobs of glue sticking out, especially when I clamp it together and it squeezes out from those edges. So I did wind up grabbing some of the sawdust that I had made earlier and using that to fill some of the gobs, so that when I sanded it down, you really didn't notice it a whole lot if I needed to sand it down, if it showed at all. And you're gonna see my awesome helpy helper right there, Mr. Safety, walking in the background. That's my hubby, who lets me use his tools and makes sure that I keep my fingers and my eyes. And although this is a piece of decor, I would like it to stand if need be and not be too wobbly. So when I glued down this top portion, I also used the clamps to not just clamp it to that base, but onto the board that it was sitting on, to try to keep it a little more flat and finished. And I was using Tite Bond original wood glue. And you'll notice my littlest helpy helper walking through the top corner also in the garage. And yes, this is our garage, our working garage. So it is a mess. And we're always working on multiple projects. So apologies in advance. Almost done.